Okay, my audio is working. Let's go ahead and screen share. So I share my entire screen. Minimize this. Hide that. Go to here. Left side. Go to here. Right side. Okay. Okay. Start. Start. Okay. Let's double check. Make sure we're going. Good. We're live. We're screen sharing. Let's get started. Unit and lesson planning is super important, but there are a lot of different facets to it that can affect the quality. Things like quality of time, actual time spent on it, how well a teacher knows their students, classroom cohesiveness, and a range of other issues. Most teachers are overworked as it is and have little time to just sit and focus on the lesson plan. Rather, from a personal experience, creating a lesson plan for the unit or otherwise is done in bits and pieces. First, the overall lesson or standard is developed, a time frame is set. Next, student abilities are considered, and the plan is adjusted accordingly. Then, the addition of assessments is required. Lastly, the final plan should be given wiggle room for unforeseen events or shifting speeds in learning. When all is said and done, there are still some days where the plan gets chucked in almost entirely. It was too difficult, too easy, students went on an unexpected field trip, there was a fight, or a number of other issues. But that said, there are still some good cohesive lesson plans that come together nicely. Here, I'll look at some and some of the resources that they utilize to make sure that it goes off without a hitch. The first lesson is a timeline of a whole whole class social studies. Yep. So this first video I observed does a whole class social studies timeline project. And here we can see the class sitting around focusing on one specific project. So social studies is a complex, intertwined subject. It includes events, actors, locations, randomness. It can be difficult to teach. Social studies is a complex, multifaceted, intertwined subject that includes events, actors, locations, and even randomness at times. So teaching can be difficult. Narrowing the scope can make it a bit easier on students, but it's still a pretty monumental subject. As an instructor interested in teaching social studies, I've imagined and planned units that revolve around group projects. A simpler way to consider teaching social studies is in chunks or blobs. That's the event in question, with strings coming out of it. These are the details relating to the event. So if you can imagine that as you're teaching social studies, it gives you a leg up on how to flesh out the important parts. What the teacher does here is she's planned out a timeline for this group or for this entire class. Um, I think group projects are great. You have multiple eyes and multiple minds focusing on one thing, and it can definitely aid in learning. The teacher doesn't focus on an event specifically. She focuses on a theme, and each student is given their own chunk of this theme. They're talking about slavery in America, and they're talking about the timeline involved with that. Before it affected the states, while it was affecting the states, and after it was abolished. So there's a couple of resources I'm going to look at. Pause that for a minute. The first is going to be from SoundOut. First is going to be from SoundOut. Meaningful student involvement. That's cut off there. But it's using students as teachers. So SoundOut talks about the importance and effectiveness of students as teachers, the types of student teachers, places for student teachers, the benefits of student teaching, and other anecdotal stories. Um, in the video, we see that the teacher utilizes students as teachers in the classroom. It's meaningful. It's kind of the engine that drives student-focused conversation. If you have one student teaching another student how to do something or what their specific date is in reference to the topic, then they get to have a bit of a conversation. They get to elaborate on it and anything else they've learned about it. The classmates will engage with the material better. They're doing so much more than just rote memorization. You know, studying and then test and studying and then test. It's a more enjoyable, less boring way. Utilizing student teachers requires more thought and consideration during the lesson planning phase, um, but it's much more beneficial in the long run. The second resource is going to be from Edutopia, talking about why is project-based learning important for a number of reasons. Um, so she uses a project to get the students interested and focused on the subject. They're a great way to teach social studies. I find it to be more beneficial if the groups are small, 3 to 4. Project-based learning is said to build multiple 21st century skills. Here's a few of them right there. Personal and social responsibility, planning, critical thinking, reasoning, creativity, strong communication skills for interpersonal presentation needs, visualizing decision making, knowing how to use and knowing how to use technology and which tool is the most appropriate for the task. Here, they're not using technology per se within the lesson plan or within the video, but it still builds on it. Let's go back to the video. So as the project progresses, the teacher is seen given multiple consistent formative assessments. These assessments are encouraging to most and aid in getting the students to talk a little more about what they know or what they think they know. There's different times you see students struggling with a question or they're really not sure how to finish their answer. Like when they're asked, what was your date? What were you given? Oh, I was given this date. And on that date, they blank out. And then there's usually another student or the teacher that generally picks up on it. I think that's a very effective way of doing assessments. And now for the second lesson. Okay. So for the second lesson, we're doing once again, social studies, Massachusetts ESE. This video opens with the teacher asking students to pull out a big ideas worksheet in their notebooks. From what I've gathered, I've watched the video. This sheet can be used to show continuity throughout the unit or units as it references thematical information. It seems to be crafted across multiple lessons. The way she talks about it implies that this has been consistent for a while. So anyway, in this lesson, the sheet is expanded on. She gives more information, they write down on it, and then they utilize it during the lesson that follows. Students are asked to think about a specific question, and for formative assessments, they'll utilize the sheet. So anyway, this Big Ideas worksheet is a type of graphical organizer. You know, a picture representation of some of the important ideas and themes seen throughout the unit so far. As class progresses, the teacher mentions different resources on their sheet different times. So look at number 1, look at number 5, look at number 8, to express how best to utilize what they're talking about in class. So then the teacher moves the student's attention to the questions of the day on the board, and then to the back of the room where posters are referenced. So what I like about it so far is the teacher's engaging. There's multiple points of interest. First at their desk, then at the board, and then at the back of the room. So there's kind of this slight activity going on. She successfully engages the students by asking questions, referencing previous work, introducing new material, and expand on their existing information. So yeah, the students are definitely engaged. It's pretty well constructed, it seems. But the teacher uses 2 research-based teaching approaches. We're going to look at that. Okay, so this is called the obvious benefits of in-class writing assignments. David Gubler, he uses research-based evidence to support his teaching. So he focuses on writing. He says writing is a great way for students to break from the noise and interaction with the rest of class. It gives students a time to focus inward. Well-constructed prompts lay the groundwork for good classroom discussion, providing a dedicated space and time. Now that's important. You have the same space and time to focus on writing. It encourages students to think deeper and help them become better writers. If the writing prompts are regular and connected to the readings, it helps ensure students spend more time on the material. And open-ended questions in writing are often very effective, even more so than quizzes. So the teacher does this very well, as we see throughout the video. And I think that's a great way to further educate these students. The second is Teach Hub. And Teach Hub focuses on graphic organizers. These graphic organizers, well, these are more colored than the students in the video. It wasn't colored, but whatever, it's still a graphic organizer. So it talks about how graphic organizers are a great way for collecting ideas along a specific theme or criteria. They can be great in literature. They can be great in using abstract ideas, which is what this focuses on. This video focuses on beliefs and ideas and opinions and culture. So I think that's a great usage of that. So the first video seemed well constructed enough as to get the lesson through, except for a few issues. It's a project-based lesson, but there's too many students involved with, one project. So they're kind of sitting around here, and like a couple of them are a little bored and yawning. So maybe make the group smaller next time, I think. I mean, it was amazing that it was good that she planned it out like this, I feel. It just simply doesn't seem to work as effectively as she thought it would. And the second lesson plan, there's nothing else I can say about it. I mean, the students seemed really engaged. There were no real issues. Most of the students were reflective and engaged and talking to each other. I think it was just absolutely fantastic. So both lessons successfully implemented interesting lesson plans, and both of them seem to have it stretched throughout a unit. And what we're looking at now is simply the end lesson plan or a major point throughout the unit. So students were engaged with the project in front of them. The second had multiple visuals, engaging conversation, writing prompts, and consistent redirecting. I think these two lesson plans were very, very effective. And this concludes the project.